Many have tried to determine by their own calculations when the end will come, but always fail because the rule applies, as Jesus says, no one knows the day or hour. And even Jesus says he doesn't know, only the Father knows. So anyone trying to do that, you already know they're false teachers. In the time of Noah, God gave the years of 120 years for mankind, and then the end would come. And so Noah completed all this work within that time. Everyone that was in the ark got in there, and the door was shut, and the flood came. And Jesus foretold that back in his time, the generation of that time would experience the destruction of the temple, which happened in their lifetime in 70 CE. Now the stone was left upon a stone in regards to the temple. But in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus talks about the various things that Christians would have to endure to the end, which the destruction of Jerusalem was one of those things. But he also showed that at the end, there would be the sign of the Son of Man in the heavens. Every eye will see that sign. So we don't know when that end's going to come, do we? But the Bible does give us some understanding of things. And we can look at that in the book of Daniel chapter 2. There we know Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. So he put it to his spiritual advisors, so to speak, his advisors, to not only tell him what the dream meant, but also tell him what he had dreamt. And if they didn't, they were going to be killed. I mean, this was brutal. And so they were under it there. They were under the real pressure. They were saying, how are we going to do this? Ain't nobody else ever done that. That was his spiritual advisors were saying. So if you don't, you're dead. And Daniel, though, when he heard about it, he pleaded for time to pray, him and his companions, to ask God for help to not only know what Nebuchadnezzar had dreamt, but also know what it meant. And so that was provided by God's mercy. And so he immediately, at Daniel 2:24, Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to execute the wise men of Babylon. And he said, do not execute the wise men of Babylon. The interpretation is here. God has provided. As for verse 30, chapter 2, verse 30 says, for me this mystery has been revealed to me, not because I have greater wisdom than anyone else alive, but so that your majesty may know the interpretation, that you may understand what went through your mind. And then he goes on to tell him the dream. He says in verse 31, your majesty, look, and there before you stood a large statue, an enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance. The head of the statue was made of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of baked clay. While you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. Then the iron, the clay, and the bronze, the silver, and the gold were all broken to pieces and became like chaff on a threshing floor in the summer. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace. But the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and we will now tell the king its interpretations, verse 36 brings out. So here, Nebuchadnezzar, no doubt looking, he said, yeah, that's it. That's what I dreamt. Wow, he was like probably really taken back because Daniel told him exactly what he saw and the details in regards to that dream. So what was the interpretation? It says, you, O king, verse 37, the King of kings, to whom the God of heavens has given the kingdom, the might, the strength, and the glory, and into whose hand he has given men wherever they may dwell, as well as the beasts of the field and the birds of the heavens, whom he has made rule over all them, you yourself are the head of gold. So here he helps him to appreciate that you're the head of gold. That's what it represents. You're the top. You're the big dog in the world right now. Verse 39, after you another kingdom, talking like kingdom, not kings, kingdom will rise in fear to you. See, and this kingdom was the Medes and the Persians, as Daniel chapter 5 brings over, took over the Babylonian Empire. And then another kingdom, a third one of copper, that will rule over the whole earth. That rulership proved to be Greece, which took over the Medo-Persia, which had become the big dog. Greece took them over, and they became the big dog. And as for the fourth kingdom, it will be strong like iron. For just as iron crushes and pulverizes everything else, yes, that iron that shatters, it will crush and shatter all these. So here we have this, the legs of iron. And throughout Daniel identifies Medo-Persia and Greece. But this particular kingdom he does not identify. But we know that this kingdom was Rome that took over Greece. And, Rome became a tremendous empire. It lasted for a long time, very long time. And it was definitely a devastating empire. But now we get to the feet. We know who all the legs are. Roman Empire was the legs, the iron. Now we go to the other kingdom, 41. And just as you saw the feet and the toes to be partly of clay and of a potter and partly of iron, the kingdom will be divided, but some of the hardness of iron will be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with soft clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom will be partly strong and partly fragile. So just as you saw iron mixed with soft clay, they'll be mixed with the people, but they will not stick together one to the other, just as iron does not mix with clay. So here we see this kingdom is different. It had the iron like Rome, but it was mixed with clay. It was different from the Roman Empire. It had the strength, had the might, but it had the clay that made it fragile. And it shows that it was mixed with the people. They will not stick together one to the other, just as iron does not mix with clay. Now, what do we find here? Who is this kingdom? We know the other kingdoms. Who is this one? Whoever the iron and clay is. This is very important identification. Because notice in verse 44, in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom and will never be destroyed. And this kingdom will not be passed on to any other people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, and it alone will stand forever. Just as you saw that out of the mountain a stone was cut, not by hands, and that it crushed the iron, the copper, the clay, the silver, and the gold. The grand God has made known to the king what will happen in the future. The dream is true, and its interpretation is trustworthy. And it is, because we see the succession of empires: Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. Now, the feet of clay and iron. And this is very important. And you want to think about this in this regard. Let's say, for instance, a hurricane is going to come. Maybe it's in the Gulf of Mexico, maybe in the Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean, or wherever. While it's out there, people are charting it, trying to see where it will land, wherever the hurricane lands. And it's very important, isn't it? Because people know, okay, we're going to board up, we're going to evacuate, this type of thing. What are we going to do? And decisions can be made and preparations can be made. So wherever it's going to hit, that's very important information. You can't have fraudulent information when it comes to a hurricane, because that puts people off guard. You have to have truthful information, don't you? So this statue that Nebuchadnezzar sees is destroyed. The succession happens over a period of time, but eventually this whole statue is destroyed. And where is it destroyed at? Well, let's go back to in Daniel chapter 2 and verse 34. It says, while you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. So here it's talking about God's kingdom, when it would come. And where does it smash it, that statue? At the feet, iron and clay. So it's like telling you where the hurricane is going to hit. It's going to hit at the feet of iron and clay. So if we can identify what kingdom is the feet of iron and clay, then we can identify what government, at least, that'll be around when the end does come. What kingdom, what world power, as these are, will be there when it strikes, when that kingdom strikes. And so who is the feet of iron and clay? Who would that be? Well, again, it is mixed with soft clay with the people. They're not sticking to one to the other, just as iron does not mix with clay. Now think about it. This word it used here, fragile, is partly strong and partly fragile. I've heard that during the Trump years, particularly, everything that was going on with the contesting of votes and all the protests and everything that was going on, the word I was hearing from many people that listen on the news using the word fragile. How fragile the United States government is, and how if Trump had the right people in place, he'd been able to accomplish what he wanted. And so the fragility was recognized in the American government. And the mixture of the people in the government. In other words, this defeat in clay is not just have iron that's backs it, but it's the people that's involved in it. And what is America? America is government by the people, for the people, of the people. The vote. Congress made of civilians and so forth. All these votes that have to take place there's voting going on all over the place. Representatives of states, representatives of federal government, there's all kind of city, local, Democrats, Republicans, independents, and they're not sticking to one another, are they? They're doing whatever it takes to be in power. It's just division all the way down. And everything, the thing that keeps that division rolling is racism. Just racism all over, that racism that goes on. I mean, they can't even pass a budget. They can't even hardly decide on a speaker to speak for the people of the House of Representatives. They have a hard time getting anything done. Words like gridlock and, it's just government coming to a standstill. Government shutting down. Now imagine in Nebuchadnezzar's day, you tell him about government shutdown. There ain't no government shutdown, I'm the government. Things gonna go on like I want them to go. But in America, the possibility of a government saying we're closed for business. The division, as Jesus said, the kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. Yes, America, particularly during World War I and World War II, showed itself to be the big dog. Government finances are based on the American dollar. America has 800 bases all over the world. They don't have as many nuclear weapons as Russia, but they got the most sophisticated. And what difference does it make anyway? They have enough to do just as much what Russia could do. Their economy is far larger. Everybody is pretty much under the auspices of America. America could say, sanction this country, that country, and it means something. Yeah, America fits this pattern. America fits the big dog. That fits this where the people are engaged and they're determining, they have an influence into what the power of their government does. And so America proves to be the feet of iron and clay. So once we identify that it's America that is its feet of iron and clay, then we know that sometime while America is ruling, that this hurricane of God's judgment is going to strike. Sometime during. Now when? I don't know. It's not based on any generation thing that the Watchtower is talking about, nor any overlapping generation they're talking about. It has no relevance. But it's interesting that in Daniel chapter 2, it gives us this information to help us to appreciate that, yes, even though we don't know the day or hour, we know what government will be around when the end comes. And so with the United States being in existence, the clock is ticking even more. The time is running out. So that's why it's important for us today, as Jesus said, not to be deceived by other people, because, just like in Noah's day, we want to make it we want to be inside the ark of safety. But if we keep getting detoured by false religion, false teachings, if we keep getting in religions where the imperfect human is getting unquestioned authority and they can move you and toss you around any way they want to, then we're not going to be able to get to that door and get in there and be secure and safe. Because the Bible says the world is passing away, but those who do the will of God are the ones who are going to survive that. So again, we see we're in that time period. And that means that all these other things we read in Revelation are going to take place. And that when Revelation talks about Jesus, when he will appear in the sky, and that will be a sign that it's over. I think of what happened in Jericho, because it says in Revelation that every eye, chapter 1, verse 7, every eye will see him, and the weeping and gnashing and people running for cover and things of this nature, running to the hills and mountains and so forth. It makes me think of Jericho, when the Israelites first came in the promised land, where first conquest was Jericho. And what did they do? Do you remember what they did? Wasn't it marching around the city with the priests and so forth, not saying a word? And then on that final day, that seventh day, march around 6 times, and that final time they may give a loud shout, and the walls came falling down. Now, I can imagine the 6 days that they were marching around there and just not saying anything, just walking around. And the people in Jericho, they're scared. They shut up tight because they say these people came out of Egypt. They already took over parts of Gilead and Gilead over there. King of, I think, the Sihon and so forth like that, Bashan. They took over that area. And here they're at our doorstep. I mean, they came out of Egypt. We heard about how they came out of Egypt. And they're on our doorsteps. And they marching around 6 times, they ain't saying nothing. And the anticipation, the fear, that was the tension in the air, the fear in the air, you probably could cut it with a knife. Imagine the same thing happen, because the Bible says that the nations will fight against Jesus. They will, all this money they spend on weapons, they will use against Jesus. But imagine that sign of the Son of Man in heaven just sits there for a while. Just sits there in the sky, and nothing happens. The weeping and the gnashing and the teeth that would go on. And then a commencement call that Revelation 14 talks about, and the destruction happens. So, like Paul said, we got to work out our salvation with fear and trembling. And that means we cannot trust in any man. You don't trust in me, you don't trust in anybody. You check it, you make sure, and when you can prove it, you got the truth that sets you free to survive when that hurricane of God's judgment comes. Thank you.